Hello everyone, welcome to Business School 101. If you are interested in studying international business, there's one organization that unquestionably needs to be on your radar. WTO, or the World Trade Organization. But what exactly is the WTO, what are its major objectives, how does it function, and what criticisms has it faced since its inception? In this video, I'll discuss these questions with you. Section 1. Introduction. Over the past 60 years, the WTO, which was established in 1995, and its predecessor organization the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, have helped to create a strong and prosperous international trading system, thereby contributing to unprecedented global economic growth. The WTO currently has 164 members, of which 117 are developing countries or separate customs territories. WTO activities are supported by a secretariat of some 700 staff, led by the WTO Director General. The secretariat is located in Geneva, Switzerland, and has an annual budget of approximately Swiss francs 200 million. The three official languages of the WTO are English, French, and Spanish. Section 2. Objectives. The WTO was established with 5 key objectives related to international trade. 1. Improving people's lives. The fundamental goal of the WTO is to improve the welfare of people around the world. The WTO's founding Marrakesh Agreement recognizes that trade should be conducted with a view to raising standards of living and expanding global trade. 2. Negotiating trade rules. The WTO was born out of 5 decades of negotiations aimed at progressively reducing obstacles to trade. Where countries have faced trade barriers and wanted them lowered, the negotiations have helped to open markets for trade. 3. Overseeing WTO agreements. At its heart are the WTO agreements, negotiated and signed by the bulk of the world's trading nations. Essentially contracts, these documents provide the rules for international commerce and bind governments to keep their trade policies within agreed limits. 4. Maintaining open trade. The system's overriding purpose is to help trade flow as freely as possible because this stimulates economic growth and employment and supports the integration of developing countries into the international trading system. 5. Settling disputes. Trade relations often involve conflicting interests. Agreements, including those painstakingly negotiated in the WTO, often need interpreting. The most harmonious way to settle these differences is through a neutral procedure based on an agreed legal foundation. Section 3. How it works. Here's a breakdown of how WTO's decision-making process typically works. 1. Ministerial conferences. The highest decision-making body in the WTO is the Ministerial Conference, which includes representatives from all member countries. The Ministerial Conference meets at least once every 2 years to make key decisions on major policy issues and the direction of multilateral trade agreements. 2. General Council meetings. In the interim between ministerial conferences, the General Council, which includes representatives from all member nations, convenes regular meetings. The General Council also convenes in different configurations to serve as the dispute settlement body and the trade policy review body. 3. Consultations and negotiations. Most of the work in the WTO comes from bottom-up consultations and negotiations among member countries. These consultations and negotiations happen in various committees and working groups, each dealing with different aspects of trade. 4. Decision by consensus. A distinctive feature of the WTO's decision-making process is that decisions are generally made by consensus. This means that decisions require the acceptance of all member countries. If a consensus cannot be reached, a decision can be made by voting, although this is rarely done. 5. Trade policy reviews. The WTO conducts regular reviews of each member's trade policies and practices. These reviews are aimed at enhancing transparency, monitoring policy developments, and assessing the impact of a country's trade policies on the global trading system. Section 4. Real-world examples. Now let's dive into 2 examples, one related to the WTO's dispute settlement function and one related to trade liberalization. Number 1. US versus EU over Airbus and Boeing. One of the most significant and complex disputes in the WTO's history has been the conflict between the United States and the European Union over subsidies for Airbus and Boeing, the world's 2 largest airplane manufacturers. The US complained that the EU and certain member countries were providing unfair subsidies to Airbus. In response, the EU filed a complaint about the US's subsidies to Boeing. After over a decade of litigation, the WTO's appellate body eventually ruled that both the US and EU had provided billions of dollars in illegal subsidies to their respective aircraft manufacturers. As a result, both parties were authorized to impose billions of dollars in retaliatory tariffs on each other. Number 2. China's accession to the WTO. An example of the WTO's role in trade liberalization can be seen in China's accession to the WTO in 2001. Prior to joining, China underwent significant economic reforms to align its domestic policies with the WTO's principles of free trade, non-discrimination, and transparency. As a condition of its membership, China agreed to significantly lower tariffs and remove non-tariff barriers, opening up its vast domestic market to foreign businesses. Since its accession, China has become an integral part of the global trading system and the world's largest goods trader. Section 5. Critics. The WTO has faced various criticisms since its inception. 1. Inequity between nations. Critics argue that the WTO tends to favor wealthier, more powerful nations at the expense of developing countries. While all nations have equal voting rights, in practice, wealthier countries often have more influence due to their greater resources and market power. 2. Undemocratic decision-making process. Some criticize the WTO for a lack of transparency and inclusivity in its decision-making process. Important decisions are often made in green room meetings, which are informal sessions attended by a select group of countries. This process has been criticized for excluding many smaller and less powerful nations. 3. Undermining sovereignty. The WTO's dispute settlement process can override national laws, which some argue undermines national sovereignty. If a country's laws or regulations are found to violate WTO agreements, the country may be required to change those laws or face trade sanctions. 4. Lack of labor and environmental standards. Critics also argue that the WTO's primary focus on trade liberalization has often neglected labor rights and environmental protection. 5. Promotion of corporate interests. Some critics argue that WTO rules often favor large multinational corporations at the expense of smaller businesses and vulnerable populations. 6. Stalled negotiations. For example, the Doha Development Round, launched in 2001 to address issues of concern to developing countries, has been criticized for its slow progress and failure to reach a comprehensive agreement. Section 6. Summary. The World Trade Organization is a global entity comprising 164 member countries as of 2021. Collectively, these member nations engage in a significant portion of the world's trade in goods and services, giving the WTO a substantial influence over global trade rules and practices. However, it's essential to understand that the WTO's influence can be subject to various factors, such as changes in global economic conditions, technological advancements, geopolitical dynamics, and the rise of emerging markets. Alright, that's all for today's topic. If you have any questions regarding this video, please leave your thoughts in a comment below. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.